Aloha and welcome everyone to Wise Ask, the impromptu edition. So impromptu that, you know what? There's something I want to show you. And so give me one moment while I load it onto this thing. It'll just be a minute here. Oh, can I not load it? Well, maybe I'll just have to read it to you then without loading it up. I don't know why. Hold on a moment. Grandpa's got to figure something out. Aha. Okay. That. Right. Okay. That. But I don't want to show that to you just yet. So, we'll get to it. All right, everyone out there in listener land, now that you've watched me do that. So I want to talk about the election. I want to talk about what the hell just happened. And I want to not just talk about it in terms of like what happened, how the media is already trying to respond, which is wrong, but also the our undoing sort of pulled back wholeness version of what's going on, which is a perpetual motion machine called the human mind. But we'll get to that. So Trump won the election, and now it's funny because I've seen like progressive media outlets online saying that they're losing listenership because, well, some people just need a break. Some people are just tuning out because they're so disheartened. But a lot of people are afraid to speak up because of the coming, autocracy. That they don't want to get thrown in jail or deported to some island somewhere, I don't know what, for speaking up to a dictator, to an incoming dictator. And also online, my own sort of friends list, I've seen the same thing, the worry about, well, if we speak out, are they going to come for us? And I would argue that even if the government goes that way, we're pretty small potatoes out here, just talking amongst ourselves. So I don't know about that, but hey, I say resist either way. But I want to talk about all this. So what happened? Donald Trump won. Nobody saw it coming. I mean, Trumpers will say they saw it coming, but even Donald Trump didn't see it coming, which is why he was foreshadowing or whatever that he was going to rig the election in as many ways as possible. He talked about he's got some deal with the House Speaker that is going to win him the election, and we'll find out about it after the fact. We know that he had his people installed in various districts in various states to do the counting, and so maybe there were shenanigans. Who knows? But barring some massive flip of a switch type fraud around the country, it does look as though he won the popular vote and the Electoral College out of nowhere, much to everyone's surprise. And people are trying to make sense of it in the mainstream media and in the progressive left spaces online by going down the list of things that either Kamala Harris could have done differently, or Joe Biden not getting out early enough, or being attached to his administration, which people were fed up with, all of that, all of those issues. And none of those issues are wrong, and all of those issues are the thing moving forward to correct. Bernie Sanders did a write-up, I think last night it might have been, basically saying, of course, the people have turned on the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party turned on working people long ago. And like, yeah, all of this is true. We could go down the history of like how the Democratic Party turned right wing, turned to big business, and were basically, turned politics into the WWE. We hear this with Trump because he was actually in WWE for a minute. But really, they did the good cop to the Republican bad cop, and they thought they could, get the big bucks, but also give people some crumbs and keep that going forever. And, you can't. You can't keep it going forever. And so, as a result, you end up creating, the right has to go further right and create, like, fascist monsters to be the new right wing. And at this point, with Fox News, I know that there are other even further right outlets now, but Fox News, which isn't just a cable station, but owns like all the local stations, Clear Channel, doing right-wing radio, Rush Limbaugh back in the day. All of this stuff was just a perpetual anger, fear machine geared toward whites, white fears, phobias, and especially white male phobias. And so of course they're going to go that way. You know what I mean? Like, of course it's going to stick when you put out the fascist monster. Eventually, you put him in a clown suit and have him do jokes, and it's going to be appealing to a lot of people. All of this is true. I'm not denying any of this. But the other truthy truth is that we already know who Trump is because we saw him in 2016. For those of us who knew him before that from New York, it was no surprise what he was. But everyone knows what he is, and yet not just white men. There were a lot of black and Latino voters. There were a lot of white women who voted for this monster and voted for the monstrosity that is to come. And a lot of it, if you're a woman or if you're a minority, it's a lot of like, well, he's going to go after them. He's not going to go after me, No, he's going after all of you. Like, if you're not a billionaire, you're screwed. We're all in this together, folks. That's what we're going to learn here. But this is my point, is like all of the shoulda, woulda, coulda stuff and all the historical facts of how the Democratic Party became as weak as it did and the Republicans became as far right as they did are irrelevant to what happened, in the sense that, again, we all know who Trump is. And so you don't vote against Kamala Harris for someone like Trump. You could get fooled into voting for someone else, but not Trump, unless you hate women or black people or, some combination of that. Like, you really don't want a black woman in power. That's the end of the story. She has a vagina and she has dark skin. And a lot of people were like, the majority of the country, in fact, was like, no, we don't want that. And how you get to the place where you can be so boldly racist and sexist is the interesting thing to unwind. But once you're there, it's not as though he was a viable option to anything bad that you thought about her, any of her policies or her presentation that you thought were like terrible or not for you or whatever, don't compare to the destroying the country, right? Like, and I know that there are a lot of people who think they want to destroy the country because in their heads and their imaginations, it's an interesting thing to do. It's an experiment, right? And it's like, oh, it feels rebellious and you can finally get back at the man. But either you can afford to do that because you're in a situation financially and because you're white and because you're male where you can afford to do that and not have to care about anyone else, and so block off your racism and sexism from yourself that when I say you're a racist and a sexist, it doesn't even register. You just get mad. Like, no, I don't. I love my friends who are like the one black guy I know. But it's like, no, if you can vote, if you've got the white privilege to not care at all about any of the issues for anyone around you, and just vote in what is in your best interest, or barring what you think is in your best interest, or barring that, some anger thing of like owning the libs. You're owning you, dude. You just owned you. You just, I mean, it may feel like, yeah, we got them, but you're getting you because you live here too. Like the fantasy where they're not coming for you, they're coming for you. I mean, he has said as much, right? Like he has shown disdain for his own fan base over and over again. Oh, but he doesn't mean it. He's just joking. Except we already know that he isn't, because we've seen what he did the last time and what he wanted to do and couldn't get away with it. And now we see that not only does he not have any guardrails in his administration, he's got lunatics running the asylum, but he's also been given a pass by the Supreme Court, who, you know, have basically said, yeah, go be a dictator. That's great. This is the last gasp of old, stodgy, white, you know, men and the women who love them. So, so that's the situation we're in. I mean, it probably is the case that democracy is over. Although it will be interesting because Trump is old, and if he passes away in office and J.D. Vance takes over, does the magic go away and then suddenly the spell is lifted, and even the people who voted for him, once they start feeling the burn, are like, screw you, J.D. Vance, we're voting you out. And J.D.'s like, but I'm the perpetual guy who's going to be in charge forever, right? I mean, I don't know that it can work out for him that way because nobody in his party seems to like him, but, you know, these Trump cultists don't care about facts, and so odds are when they feel it, they're not, you know, the heat coming on them financially and otherwise, they're not going to own up by and large to what they've done. They're going to, I mean, we've seen this. If you've ever had a conversation with a Trumper or watched one online, like a debate or something where you say a fact to them and you watch their entire face and being crinkle up and go, and it's like it tilts the machine, where like a normal human being would be like, oh, huh, all right, well, I guess I got to change my mind about that. No, there's no changing their mind, because at this point they're in a cult, and it's not about them. It's about the transference of the anger and the angst and the narcissism and all of that from Mein Führer Donald Trump. They've taken on his psychological mess. And so they are extensions of one another. They're angry on his behalf. You know what I mean? So it's not rational to begin with. So any sort of rationality just feels like a painful moment to be glossed over and forgotten about, and then they just go on with the same spiel. This is just what happens. So, you know, there's no good answer here. Be strong. I don't know what. I mean, feel whatever you're feeling, of course. This is a dark day. And if you have any friends in your social media groups who you don't really know, who turn out to be Trumpers, and you express any sort of grief, you're going to get that little laugh emoji, you know, that little annoying laugh emoji where they're like, ah, ha, 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 look at you, snowflake. And meanwhile, like there's no concept of like, wait, you just spent the last how many years claiming the election was stolen and this one was going to be stolen, and now he just won. Guess that wasn't stolen? Like there's no moment of self-reflection ever with any of these people. It's just always move forward with the arrogance and the egotism and the ha 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 ha. Because they're caricatures of themselves at this point. And there's no easy way around that, because there's a selfishness there that is implicit. That is just like, I don't have empathy for people. If it doesn't affect me, I don't care. So it's going to have to affect them, which it will, because Trump, the first time around, had the benefit of Obama's economy. So when he came in, you know, it takes a while for the things that the former president does to kick in. And Obama had 8 years, so it had already kicked in. Everything was already sort of on the rise or whatever, you know, economically. And so by the time he got in there, he could ride that wave and then ride Obama's economy into the ground for Joe Biden to then inherit and climb us back out of. But Joe Biden also had all of the supply problems and everything from COVID. So the inflation was high forever, and you can blame Biden, but the reality is, even though we don't feel it in the purse, the reality is we did a lot better than most of the world with the inflation. That was a worldwide problem because of COVID. And there was nothing he could really do except what he did. And I mean, that's just it. So, but because he couldn't really climb out of the hole in the way that we all feel it in the purse, Donald Trump is inheriting that. And Donald Trump wants to do tariffs, which cult people are like brainwashed to believe that other countries are going to pay for these tariffs. And that's not how tariffs work. This is why, like, the stock market now is going through the roof because, Trump's back, Trump's coming back. And so all the rich people and all the corporations know they're going to be making a ton of money at our expense. So we're all going to be financially screwed for a really long time after this. Those of us without like really good stock portfolios. And who knows what he's going to do to Social Security? They want to privatize it, and they want to raise the age, retirement age. Who knows how screwed people are going to get before they revolt, and before he starts to feel it from his own people. I would suggest that it's going to be sooner than later, but that doesn't mean that they will respond with logic. That just means, Fox News will give them some boogeyman to put it onto. It'll be China's fault or whatever. It'll be communists, the enemies within, whatever it is. It'll be a lie, and then they'll believe that lie, because to not believe that lie is to have the self-reflection, and then you've got to see what a monster you are. And then you've got to feel something about that, guilt or repentance or something. You got to feel something about that. And who the hell wants to do that? Not Trumpers. So it may be a long haul until finally they're like, okay, we're not going to take this anymore. Or it may be wrong, like obviously crazier things have happened. Maybe everyone gets real fed up real fast and is like, wait, this isn't what you promised us. But that's that. And the pulled back perspective on this, let me just check. I don't even know if I'm just doing this for shits and giggles. I have no idea if anyone is watching this or wants to chat. If you want to chat and you want to challenge me on anything, question anything, voice a concern, just be heard, feel free to say something in the chat and I will respond. But the pullback perspective on all of this is what I've talked about forever. I've written about it in Urgency. I've talked about it on Aaaaand Doing Radio and elsewhere, which is that, this pendulum that we swing on between good and bad decisions, between quote unquote good and evil, it's not even right left at this point. It's just like sanity, insanity. We're going to course correct eventually. Or we have we have a good shot at it, because this is how democracies fall. And then you look around the world and most countries aren't like our democracy, and a lot of them just stay fallen for a really long time because it's really hard to uproot the guy who's got the military on his side, right? But because we're new to this, we have a shot at recovery. In the short term and in the long term, I think things always course correct. No civilization, no culture lives forever. And so we're at the end of ours. This is societal apocalypse for America. But we don't have to be on that pendulum in the first place. Like, this is the thing that's hard to believe, except in theory and in some like airy-fairy spiritual, like idealist way, but it's actually the truth of who we are, is that this machination of the human mind isn't the whole of the human mind. I mean, it's the whole of what we do. But this thing that we call human nature is actually delusional. Within the delusion, it is better to not be the fascist. It's better to be the good person or the sane person, however you want to frame it. It's better to do the best you can for the most people and all of that. But even that is a struggle sometimes, right? So, which is why we like divide off between like what are our political beliefs and our personal beliefs. How is it that I can be nice to my neighbor and then vote against my neighbor's existence? So we've got all of these disconnects internally, and we don't want to deal with the root of the problem, because the root of the problem is us. And so we deal with these objects, these examples of problems, and we hope that by putting out these little fires when we feel better, it's a respite before the next big problem. We think that that's human nature and that's just life. And then anyone who speaks otherwise, who knows otherwise from direct experience, is called enlightened or a saint, put on a pedestal and worshipped, or their ideals are worshipped as something to strive for but never actually be yourself. Or to the extent that you do be them, it's through memory. It's through memorizing words of wisdom, but they're not coming from you, and so you can always just abandon them at whim when things go wrong in your life and you start, cursing out the fates or whatever. So how do we stop doing that? Or, of course, the opposite side of that is you're a witch and you're dunked. Right? So, yeah, the establishment comes after you. But how do we see ourselves so honestly that we can no longer not have clarity about who and what we are? I mean, this is something a question that you need to sit with by yourself. And now that you're depressed, you'll have nothing but time because you're not going out. Who wants to meet new people? You just realize that your neighbors are shit. So good luck. I know I'm not going anywhere. So just sit and reflect with that there is a root of the problem to all of this, that there is this state of humanity, where we just inherit sorrow and go on with it and do what we can, do the best we can. Can we step out of that stream? Can we transcend and include that stream so that we understand it because we just were it and we have empathy for everyone in it, but we are not of that stream? It does not predict us. And is there a way to ask yourself that and look at that without wanting to achieve a result, without wanting to step out of the stream, just asking it with a childlike curiosity of like, is this possible? Which is hard to do now, because if you're emotionally like, you're looking for a way out, right? But you can't. Looking for a way out is just creating more of the stream, because the stream is thought. And so you're just running from thought to thought. You're just running to the next person's thought, or the next, or that looks good, I want to adopt that. Or come up with your own and start your own Trump cult. So, I mean, do this. I've been saying this for a long time. I've been talking about positive negation, using positive negation on yourself, on your own psychological baggage, which is, positive negation in the way that it's classically used is like you can't say what certain big concepts that we all say and talk about and feel are. You can't know them by the definitions. You can only know if they exist by peeling away the definitions. So things like love, beauty, big things like that. You can't say what love is. If it transcends and includes you, if it's bigger than you, you can't say what it is. But maybe if you can peel away what it isn't, all the definitions we've put on it, if there is a love that transcends and includes you, it will become the case. And then there will not be just a knowing that it's the case. You will be that. And so what's that saying? That's saying that, those definitions, those thoughts are you. You are a thought construct. You may think that you're a thinker thinking things, but that's just like schizophrenia, man. Actually, all of that is thought, and you are that. And so if one breaks through the non-clarity of thought, does clarity become the case? But if you say that out loud, again, you run the risk of wanting that, obviously. I mean, why would you even do it to begin with, except you desire an outcome? So this is how clear and how honest you have to be with yourself, is to not desire an outcome, but not to deny that you desire an outcome, to actually admit, like, yeah, I want an outcome. And then look at that. Why do you want that outcome? And this is where you can start positively negating yourself. You start looking at your own motivations and you peel them back and you say, why do I want an outcome to that? Well, because I feel crappy because of this. Well, why do I feel crappy because of that? And why do I, run to the next thing? And does the next thing make me feel better? I mean, just look at all of these things, but really peel away the layers of your own motivations and see what you're left with, if anything at all. Now, I've been talking about this for years, and I go further and then I stupidly tell you, what my experience was, so then you can want that for yourself, which is unfortunate because you can't want it. And yet you have to want it in order to engage with it in the first place. It's like a paradox, man. So, but just seeing all of this, hearing this entire conversation, every piece of it is the seeing it, right? So if you see it, if you're aware of it now, it doesn't have a hold on you. So I'm saying do it, because I've been talking about it, and every time I talk about it, when I come to the point of do it, everyone goes silent all of a sudden. Anyone who's engaging with me is just all of a sudden like, yeah, that sounds good. And then they never fucking do. Do it. This is your life. And unless you're rich, you ain't moving to France anytime soon, right? So how do you get right with yourself if you can't get right with the neighbors, the Trumps, and all of that? You're not going to feel better except running to another sort of revolutionary act that maybe changes things for a while, and then they come back, and then you come back, and then they come back, and this perpetual war machine goes on and on. How do you step out of that completely? You have to want to step out of that completely so badly that you're willing to honestly shed the want for it and just look. So there's that. If that doesn't make any sense to people, and it might not, please feel free to tell me. I just want to mention a few things that have happened just like during election night. On Facebook, I got first a private message. I done a post about Kamala Harris or whatever, and someone private messaged me. Someone who I've interacted with in the past. I don't really know them well, but they're probably Paratopia listeners. If you don't know, I used to do a show, and now it's in reruns on Aaaaand Doing Radio, called Paratopia with Jeff Ritzman. It was a big, paranormal and ufological show, and had a pretty good following. And a lot of those people stuck with me. And I talk like this. I've always talked like this on the show and talked like this through the years, made my political, affiliations or whatever known, which is that on the one hand, this big pulled back perspective is true. On the other hand, I'm living here in the crap. And so it is better to be progressive and doing the best I can for all than to go sit in a cave somewhere and grow my nails and hair. So that's what I do. And so, but this person private messaged me and was like, are you really voting for Kamala Harris? I'm not trying to start a fight. I just am curious. Are you serious? Which is like, of course you're trying to start a fight, dude, because you've been listening to me forever, or you haven't been listening to me forever. And it's another case of people who just turn on the radio or the podcast to hear the buzzwords they love to hear without ever engaging with it beyond that, to listen to what's being said. They just hear the buzzwords and it gives them a certain feeling, and then they think like, we're all on the same page. And it's like, we're not all on the same page. But I did go back and forth with him, and then he went away. And then another guy popped up who I did remember from back in the day, on my, publicly or whatever, on my Facebook page, to like make some stupid point about like Kamala Harris you know, somehow Dick Cheney, by teaming up with Dick Cheney, suddenly the Democrats are all hypocrites. It's like, now I have to explain this, right? Like, I've got to, and Dick Cheney's a war hawk, and that's bad, as if Trump's not. Like, yes, Dick Cheney is a war hawk, and he's awful, and nobody likes him. But of course, Kamala Harris thought, well, if I can win over the moderates and the right-leaning never-Trumpers with a Dick Cheney endorsement, then that's what I'm going to do. And progressives, from what I saw, by and large, understood it. She came out with Tim Walz as her running mate, who we liked as progressives, and then she switched her messaging and all of this further and further to the right because she thought she could get this giant coalition of people together. That doesn't mean she was going to enact their policies once in office. And we all sort of knew this, except apparently Trump people didn't know we knew this, and they certainly didn't know this, so they think that just like, oh, now you like Dick Cheney, hypocrite much? And it's like, no, we're trying to trick you. No, you morons. She's trying to fool you, but I guess it didn't work. So, in any event, and part of his shtick was to be like, well, I always thought you were a grifter anyway, but you had some good things to say, so I paid attention to you, blah, blah, blah. Which I never responded to because I thought, like, if a Trumper thinks I'm a grifter, that bodes well for me. Like, if you can't see through Trump's grift and you think I'm a grifter, then I'm probably a freaking saint. But it just is like another example of like, they've got to come out of the woodwork. They've got to say something. I don't hear from you for years. You're a friend on Facebook, and I don't hear from you ever. And now all of a sudden there's this itch to have a little conversation about this stuff. And it's just so, and yet we're the ones who are like snowflakes and easily triggered. That's the thing I don't get. But I think it's going to be indicative of things to come. So it's not going to be great. And on that note, there was a third private message I got from someone I haven't heard from in a long time. His name is Vuk, and he used to do the Tracing Owls podcast. I had him on a Paratopia special. I had him when I used to host Dreamland. It was either Dreamland or The Experience for UnknownCountry.com. I did both shows, and I don't remember which one I had him on, but it may have been Dreamland. So I had him on as a guest. He's someone who, when I first cyber met him, he seemed self-aggrandizing and stalkerish, and somebody that I wanted to put in a little box and keep at bay. But I heard his show. I listened to his show, which I don't really do anymore. I don't listen to a lot of shows anymore. But I listened to it, and I thought he was really good. I thought he asked great questions. I thought he had a lot of good stuff to say. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe he's just nervous or weird. And maybe we can work together or something. So I did his show. I had him on my shows. And the weirdness persisted. The self-aggrandizement, like I think on the Paratopia special, he was like, oh, look, I'm the new Jeff Ritzmann. And it's like, you're never going to be the next Jeff Ritzmann. But now I find him, he goes away. He drops off the face of the earth. He stops doing his podcast. And now he's in my DMs. He doesn't even live in America. He lives in Serbia. And there he is trolling me over how Kamala Harris is a retard. These are his words. And, Trump may be a bully, but she can't even string a sentence together, and she's a retard, and this sort of stuff. Like, go back to your country, dude. But okay, let's engage. What are you talking about? Like, go away. Like, I tried to keep it friendly, and then eventually I just said, what are the odds that I really want to be having this conversation with you while our country is crumbling before my eyes? Go F yourself. And then banned him. And then, this morning, in a completely unrelated, a friend sent me, I guess someone had tweeted Vuk's Instagram. He's changed his Instagram handle and has become a full-on Trumper, which is fine, I guess, that if that's what you want to do, that's your business. But I do feel that for the ufological community, I have to read this to you and put it on the screen here because it is problematic for us in a certain sense. Let me see if I can I do this, or will I screw something up? Hold on, I'm going to another screen for one hot second. New. I am back. How do I do this? Why can't I do this? Well, maybe I will make my life easier and find it again for you. So this is image. This is his Instagram. And I will read this to you. He says, now, so his new handle is Trump is King with 2 G's. What I regret most about paranormal podcasting is feeling pressured into pretending to be woke or interested in social justice just so I may have access to guests to talk with, and explore interesting topics. Topics which I realized eventually are just a cover for radical nonsense, validation of idiotic beliefs, and virtue signaling through pretending to be marginalized or a victim, as well as people denying to acknowledge their mental illness or autism, instead substituting with ridiculous fantasies to cover them up. So, if you are in ufology, I wanted to bring that to your attention because eventually I'll get this right. Because that's kind of dangerous. You don't want to be, if he makes a comeback or something, if he pretends he never wrote this stuff and comes back, you're going to want to know who he is. Or if he starts engaging with you, just know that he feels like he's undercover. And what's interesting is, again, Trumpers love to tell on themselves. So we feel victimized, but here he is victimizing himself because he's not allowed to engage with the hatred that he feels in his heart. Right? Like he's got to pretend to, let me see this again. What I regret most is feeling pressured to pretend to be woke. Now, this is where progressives and liberals alike have all dropped the ball in allowing woke to become a word. Because all woke means is, I don't have that prejudice. Or, I don't have that prejudice, and I am supportive of marginalized people who are have prejudice against them, whether it be trans people, LGBTQ, whatever, black, brown, females in this moment of having their rights taken away. That's what woke means. I don't have those prejudices. So every time right-wingers, wokeism, I'm too woke. I mean, they can mean, they can be right in the sense that, like, if they're like, what I don't like is that you put on airs, you pretend to, in fact, he's saying this, right? That basically you're pretending to not have these prejudices. And there are people who, wear it like a badge and they, are melodramatic and stuff. And that can be true on the left. But what apparently is always true on the right is that you don't fake it, but you also don't feel it at all in any real way. So you're telling on yourself. And I don't know why no one is saying that out loud every time somebody says, I don't like woke. Why don't you just say to them, so you hate, who do you hate? Black people, trans people? Like, what is your flavor of hatred? And where does it come from? Which news source told you to hate them? Who scapegoated the Mexicans for you so that you can think that a border wall needs to be erected around the entire country? So I'm going to go back over this. What I regret most about paranormal podcasting is feeling pressured into pretending to be woke, to pretending to care about people. I had to pretend because I'm a sociopath, apparently. Is that what you're admitting to? or interested in social justice. I had to pretend to care about social justice. What a burden that must have been, Vuk. Just so I may have access to guests to talk with and explore interesting topics. And what I find weird about that too is like ufology, I don't know about the rest of paranormal world, but ufology in particular skews right wing. There's a lot of Trumpers in UFO world, at least for the researchers. And a lot of ghost investigators are former cops, right? So a lot of those guys aren't exactly voting Kamala Harris. So I don't know what you're talking about. But okay, I'll give you your experience because I'm woke enough to allow that your experience may be an outlier, and that's your experience. But why are you a victim here? A victim of having to appear to care about social justice. Topics which I realized eventually are just a cover for radical nonsense, which means what? Validation of idiotic beliefs, which is kind of the same as radical nonsense. I don't know that these are different. And virtue signaling. Okay. Through pretending to be marginalized or a victim. I don't think doing social justice necessarily, like even for those who are virtue signaling, are necessarily virtue signaling about themselves. They may be virtue signaling about how they feel for other people because they're empaths or something. But it's also very telling that you don't think anyone could be honest. Like, in your world, none of these people could possibly, and maybe even including me, could possibly care about social justice, right? Or are, wokeness, or not have prejudice. Like, nobody really wants to be better because you don't. And we all have to feel like how you feel, right, Vuk? Is that what this is? Always telling on yourselves. As well as people denying to acknowledge their mental illness or autism instead of substituting with ridiculous fantasies to cover them up. Now, I don't know because I haven't spoken to him about this, but I am going to assume that what he's talking about here stems from either having read How to Think Impossibly by Jeff Kripal, who has a chapter on this guy, Kevin Carr, I think is his name, who is autistic and claims to have had Kundalini experiences and other paranormal experiences. And or seeing Kevin subsequently in interviews and or seeing Jeff talk about them in interviews. Somewhere in there. I'm thinking, because I have never heard anyone talk about a link between autism specifically, mental illness, yes, of course, but autism specifically and being an experiencer until Kevin Carr claimed that that's what everyone is, right? Because I am. Again, this whole thing, I'm autistic, therefore everyone must be, right? So I think you're laying it a little thick here, and covering everyone with a broad brush, and are wrong. But also, I think you're lying. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that Vuk was just trolling everyone. When he first introduced himself to me or whatever, he was like, doing the self-aggrandizing. I'm a trickster in all this. I just like to troll people. He really thought he was some hot shit. And it wouldn't surprise me if, because people stopped paying attention to him, and because he thought he maybe should have been a bigger figure in this, or better paid attention to, or something, he didn't get what he wanted out of it. And so now he's burning down the house, right? But do I think that he really believes this? Not really, unless, again, he's a sociopath or something. And that's highly likely. I'm no psychologist, but just from what I'm reading and seeing here. Because if you listen to his interviews, he is good at talking about these things. Like, I don't know how you can be good at talking about issues with indigenous people, for instance, or pretend, come across as though you are caring about people, social justice or whatever, and then you're not. I mean, you really got to be nuts, Vuk. I want you to know, like, if this really does reflect you, you got a really a bigger problem than being an incel, fella. And if not, then this is just like, meh. I'm acting out. You know, I'm acting out because I didn't get what I want. I didn't get the response I wanted from this community. And or, you know, alternatively, there are people who are just self-destructive, who are just like, who actually do well, who actually do get taken seriously, and then they can't handle that, so they've got to like burn people and go back to what's comfortable for them, which is feeling like shit because their parents told them they were shit all their lives. I don't know if that's Vuk. I don't know that. But again, you know, it's a possibility. All of these are possibilities. All I know is that you know, whatever you're going through, nobody should be engaging with him in ufology and paranormal world anymore. I mean, unless he has like a moment of self-reflection, a moment of like legit that shows up somewhere in the world of like, wow, I really am sorry. I really was out of control, you know, whatever. Like, because until then, if he shows up and he just starts talking to you and he just starts befriending you, especially if you're an experiencer, but even if you're a researcher, just know that he apparently has this disdain for you and thinks you're nuts. Now, the Kevin Carr, Jeff Kripal thing, I could go on about that, but I won't. You know, a lot can be said about that. I will just say that I don't think, I'll just give you my opinion. In my opinion, having interacted with Kevin Carr and having read that chapter on him, I don't think he's had Kundalini experiences. I do think he has mental health issues. In fact, Jeff Kripal admitted in the book that he has been diagnosed. I don't remember with what, but might have been some form of schizophrenia or something. He'd been diagnosed this way. Jeff Kripal wants to argue against that. Okay, fine. That's your hill to die on. But I'm going to go with the shrinks on this one. All signs point to, for me, from, again, personal interactions as well, that there's a lot of mental illness there that I cannot overlook, coupled with I don't hear anything that reflects legit Kundalini experience. I live with Kundalini. I mean, to say I live with Kundalini sounds about as stupid as mentally ill as anything, I guess, but I live with, you know, let's just say it doesn't reflect reality in anything that I have experienced or any of the deeper stuff you can find on it, which is rare. It reflects YouTube culture, by and large, as far as I can tell. And like, you know, whatever Gopi Krishna wrote, you know, as like, hey, you feel these things and then it feels bad and then you're like, oh, it's Kundalini. No, that's not how it works. But if you know, I mean, I think Jeff Kripal's point, I guess I am going on about this. I guess Jeff Kripal's point is like, he could be mentally ill or autistic. I mean, obviously he's autistic. That's not in contention. And also be having these experiences. And so this is what an experiencer looks like, or these experiences look like, funneled through that type of mind, a neurodivergent mind. I just don't think that's happening. And I don't see anything in the essays that he has provided that are deep or impressive or anything that he couldn't have gotten by just reading spiritual literature or reading about Kundalini. I don't see it. So, but because I live it, I'm not going to put everyone in that category because I know better. So there's that. All right. Let's see. Will Stafford says, I think Kevin was described as a co-author by Kripal. If I remember correctly, there were significant contributions to the book/research project. I don't know. I don't know it. Well, I don't know what Kripal has said about it. I know that Kevin Carr has said that to me. Now, obviously, that chapter in the book is a pretty long chapter. So if that's what he's talking about, they definitely. Well, I guess he did say that in the book, right? That like Kevin and he sort of co-authored that chapter, which is a really long chapter. So it is a good portion of the book in that sense. I don't know what beyond that he's been a part of. But I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, like, because I would imagine that like anyone's involvement in Jeff Kripal's book is just going to be like, hey, could you look at this and tell me if anything sounds weird, sounds like not true? And if I were someone who didn't know any better, I might just be like, yeah, no, it all looks good, Jeff. Or if I did know better, if I were an editor, or maybe even Kevin has read a bunch of like this literature that Jeff Kripal reads, because I'm not going to say he, you know, it's not as though he's, you know, doesn't have an intellect or something, and I'm sure he does. I'm just saying that, I'm saying the other parts that I've already said. All right. Is there anything else? But I would say, well, on the Kundalini thing, I mean, this is hard. This is hard for me because I just know that he's wrong, you know? Like, I am currently writing a book on Kundalini, which is not going to be anything like this. But it's also going to call attention to the stuff that people claim is Kundalini and isn't. Like, and a lot of it is just mistaken identity. I don't know what to tell you, but also there's the part in there, God, now this is really off track, but the part in that chapter where he's talking about, I can't remember exactly, doing some sort of like days-long ritualistic thing, and then something paranormal-ish happens. I don't remember what the situation is, but I can imagine, especially for an autistic person who, you know, part of the thing is like an obsessiveness, right? Like, I can imagine obsessing over something for days and then having it sort of spill over into the room in some sense, right? But that's different than, I mean, you could say that's a hallucination, but even if it's not an hallucination, it could literally be the universe responding to you, to your over enthusiasm. I'm open to that, but that's still just conjuring something through obsessive concentration. That's not anything transcendental for you. And I challenge anyone to read that chapter and find anything that he said that sounds like love, sounds like joy, sounds like any of the things that you might feel having transcendental things happen to you, being cleared out, like anything that sounds like the death of self or selflessness even. Like, where is it? It just doesn't track for me. But like I said, I keep alluding to this. I've had personal communications with him, and if you read what I read, I don't think you'd be putting him in a book. Let's put it that way. I love Jeff Kripal and all. I think the book is good otherwise, but I think sometimes, you know, people get it wrong, and I think he's just gotten it wrong. And that doesn't make Kevin a bad person. I mean, Kevin may believe all the stuff he's saying. I'm not saying he doesn't believe the stuff he's saying. I just think he, in my non-psychologically educated opinion, I think he would do better to get help than to be put on a pedestal. That's all. But then I guess Vuk would say that about me. So look how that works. Look at the pendulum swinging again. All right, I think that's it. I don't know that this has made anyone feel better about Trump or the state of their own personal being or Jeff Kripal's book, but I'm not here to make anyone feel better. I'm just here to vent and to remind you that this it's an illusion. It's an illusion. It's all an illusion, but it's a functional illusion that we're living in. It's a necessary illusion that is going to exist. But the way to get to the empathy that you can have for people and not being of the illusion, even though you're living in it, isn't through reading some books and pretending your way to that, or doing meditations that bring you to some other predetermined illusion. It's sitting back and questioning all of this. But more to the point, I mean, the quicker point is questioning your own motives, questioning why you do things, peeling back the layers. And when it comes to how you felt during interactions with other people, or how you felt with your parents, and then you got to go further and say, why did they do what they did? Why did my parents interact that way? Why did my ex do the things she did? What do I know about his or her upbringing? And what can I assume about his or her parents? What can I assume about what do I know about my grandparents? What do I know about my great-grandparents? You peel it all away and you come to the stream. You come to the stream of human consciousness, and you realize that the illusion is that these problems, this baggage, this stuff that is actually you, that you've been saying is my baggage or my issues and I'll work on them. No, those are you. And now you've peeled them away and you realize that you're not real, that these issues aren't yours. You don't own them. Everyone has them. Like sorrow is the root of us. It's just what we do. We pass it on generation to generation. There's no getting away from that, except seeing the truth of it so deeply that this separative self-sense, who has been trained through westernization and Bibles and stuff, been trained to divorce yourself from all, now is seeing the truth that no, this is all of us. And that is a recontextualization. That moment is a transformative moment. It's not evolution through time. It's just one transformative moment where you are recontextualized in such a way that you will mistake that for enlightenment, because it's so nirvanic and joyful and all of this. And the interconnecting nature, not just with all humanity, but all life. And that's enough. That's enough for now. I mean, if we want to know ourselves truly, our actual true nature, that's the work we have to do. So get to it, because you'll feel slightly better when the brown coats come for you, or the brown shirts come for you. All right. Thanks for paying attention. Anyone else have anything else to say? I'm going to shut down otherwise, both mentally and this YouTube thing. No? Okay. I don't know when next I'm doing anything live. Right now, I will plug something. Just Aaaaand doing radio, which releases every Wednesday and usually is a 10-episode seasonal thing, is going longer this season because usually it's me doing monologues, then now and then I have a guest on. But this season is me and Tom Cheatham, who is also in Jeff Kripal's book, How to Think Impossibly. He is also referenced a number of times. He is considered the foremost expert on the, philosopher, mystic Henry Corbin. And he's also a biologist who studied the flea penis. So, but he's also now a psychonaut who's like doing iboga as we speak in South America somewhere. So we talk about all of this now. We're having a long form dialogue. So, it's not just me babbling into a camera. Now I'm forced to confront a human being who has knowledge, a knowledge base. So that can either go horribly awry if I'm a grifter, or I can hold my own. You can decide. You can go listen to it and decide. We're a number of episodes in. think 4. But come listen, join the dialogue. It's free, so it's Our Undoing Radio. It's wherever you get your podcasts. It's here on YouTube as well. All right, I am out. Thank you for paying attention. Now, go do your own inner work.